micro machines for the CDI. Boy, did Codemasters screw up a fine game port. Yes, I am spoiling the outcome from this review in the beginning right away. And that's because this game seriously pisses me off. Micro machines were little tiny toy cars that came out in the mid-80s. They never became as popular as Hot Wheels, but still got enough popularity to warrant making a game about them. Codemasters got the rights and made a fine little game for the NES. In it, players would drive different micro machines in fast-paced races through different household environments, like the kitchen table, garage or pool table for example. This was all seen in a top-down perspective. Most micros had different behaviors too, like the sports cars were faster and harder to control than say the 4x4s, and with tanks you could blow each other up. The game got pretty popular, thus received many ports. At that time I got to play it for the PC. You know, when things ran great with MS-DOS. Oh, the good times. I wasn't allowed to play many games on our home computer though, since apparently games destroy computers. Stupid parents wanting the thing all for themselves. So the only time I got to play it was at school. I pretty much learned how to handle a PC back then just from playing games on them. So let there be no one saying that games can't be educational and that I didn't learn anything at school. Anyway, when in 1995 the game was also released for the CDI, I wanted it. The NES version never got released in Europe, you see, so I got it. Man, did I feel cheated out of my money. Or my parents' money. Can't keep track of every little detail. Now, seeing the CDI version in itself, you might think that it's actually a decent game for the system. But that'd be such an unfair observation if you compare it to the original, which was already 4 years old when this came out. Starting the game up shows an intro of all the vehicles in the game. For some unknown reason, they opted to replace the old images that looked fine and put in new pixelated junk into the boxes instead that looked just awful and lack any form of personality. On the main menu you can choose to play single or multiplayer. Let's first dive into the single player portion. There you can either choose between challenge or head-to-head. In challenge mode you pick a race, do a qualifying round and then pick 3 opponents for the first tier. As long as you finish first or second you advance. Placing third or fourth will cost you a life. Every 3 races you go through, a computer player will drop out and you can then select a replacement. These characters have different styles of driving, which are described in one-word phrases above their heads. They will all scale up in difficulty over time and will all kick your ass eventually, but some will do so sooner as others. For you as player it doesn't really matter who you pick, except for the fact that you don't have to face that character anymore. Because of this, I really advise you to always pick Spider, since he'll hand you your ass really soon otherwise. He's by far the fastest computer player. Now you can either choose to first drive against the slower characters to get further, or as I tend to do, select the faster ones so you can replace at least one of them with a slower one. And keep fat ass Walter for last, since he is by far the slowest. Now the actual race really begins. Well, after some stupid, ugly and hogging opening animation. The controls are simple enough and respond well. Button 1 is for accelerating, and 2 is to brake and going into reverse. While driving the tank, pushing up on the D-pad will fire a cannon. Now let's talk about the biggest problem with this game, the frame rate. Look at the NES version. Let's see me drive around this track for 1 lap. Now let's do that same track on the CDI. Oh, and don't you dare fall asleep. What the hell were they thinking? This is Micro Machines for grandpas. This is not the fun fast-paced racing game that I remember. It's way too slow. Races take way too long this way, since some tracks can be pretty long. Heck, some of the music tracks don't even last 1 lap in some races, which says a lot about the music itself too, which isn't too great anyway. But having it repeat itself every minute just hurts the ears eventually. Making matters worse, there is no sound effects. Only in those stupid opening animations you hear your engine for just a second or so. This game got released in 1995. By then, a lot of people already got the optional digital video cartridge for the CDI. Why the hell wouldn't they utilize it? It would have helped the horrible frame rate so much, and it would have enabled them to use some sound effects. Other games, like the Apprentice for example, made it an optional enhancement. Was this just an easy cache-in, Codemasters? Did you even care when making this? Now, seeing as how slow this game is, it does become a bit easier compared to other versions. However, later on, computer drivers go so fast, it's just unfair. You have to drive flawless, and then still the only chance you have of winning is that the computer player goofs up somewhere, which luckily they do pretty often. It's just not really fun to win because of the errors of others, while you're clearly outmatched in performance. For every 3 times you finish first, you get to do a time trial race over exceedingly difficult tracks in a micro Bigfoot truck. Wow, that sounded weird. If you manage to beat the time limit, you get an extra life. If you're out of lives, you have to start over from the beginning. There's no password system and no save feature. Since this game is so slow, this is just no fun. You can spend an hour and only reach race 15. You're not even halfway there. Then fuck up and you get to start all over again. Another thing that's really weird and annoying is that you can't exit a race in progress. Sometimes I mess up in the beginning and I just want to forfeit the race and start over again to spare me some time. But no, you can't do that. Instead, you are forced to wait until the race is over. Now, there is a pause menu, but this is the most useless menu I have ever seen in any video game. When you hit button 1 and 2 together, it pauses the game and you get 2 options. To exit the menu and play on, or, and I'm not making this up, to pause the game. What the hell do they call it when a game stops and brings up a menu? When you select the pause option, it just dims the screen. Now for the $1 million question. Why not just dim the screen and pause it right away? What's with the stupid menu thingy? Some of the original game features don't even work. For example, the warrior cars should be able to blow each other up with their spikes. But in this version that doesn't seem to work, which is kind of odd. Now for multiplayer, which plays out the same as head-to-head against a computer. I couldn't find my second gamepad, but it's supported, which is nice. The Micro Machines games are pretty popular for the multiplayer action. If you don't have 2 pads like me for now, you can still play together with 1 pad. In this gamepad sharing mode, player 1 gets the directional pad and player 2 button 1 and 2. You can only steer, you always accelerate and you cannot brake, which makes the later tracks pretty hard. But since both players have the same handicap, it's fair game and it can be fun to see who does better. However, again, this version is just too slow to make this fun. The object in a head-to-head race is to drive off the screen in front. Then you win a point in a tug-of-war kind of style. You both start off with 4 points. If you get a point, you go up to 5 and your opponent down to 3. First to take all 8 points wins, or he who has the most at the end of 3 laps. Driving in front can be pretty hard if you don't know the track, since you can't see the turns coming. The computer can though, so don't think that letting him drive in front makes it any easier. Against another player, this is a pretty good tactic though, since it takes really long to get back on the track once you've fallen off, which almost always costs you a point. Now let's talk about what you're all looking at the moment, the graphics. Well, as you can see, they're not that great either. They are sharp and colorful though, but the CDI could do a lot better I think. It's also annoying that the sand in the NES version looks more realistic than the one on the CDI. Kind of strange. So in a nutshell, just avoid this game. It's bad. Micro Machines is a fine game concept in itself and can be pretty fun, although hard. But if you want to play it, get it for another system. Any system but this one. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and thanks Matt Howlett for giving me a headache and requesting this piece of shit. Jeez man, I thought you were my buddy. Take care everyone and until next time. Goodbye.